Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Colin, coming at you live from the Germantown neighborhood of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Opened up my email this morning. The news of 500 people that were having some kind of party that got out of control after a DJ refused to stop playing and refused to tell the kids to go home. Germantown, DJ, dancing. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Must have been something like this. Well, the first thing you need to know about Germantown in Philadelphia is there are no Germans in Germantown. The person who sent me an email this morning said his uncle was one of the last Germans in Germantown, and he lived there until his late 80s. This would have been in the late 1960s. He said his uncle finally moved out after large groups of black people used to stand out in front of his house at night and throw rocks and bricks and bottles at his house. So what did happen in Germantown last night? Well, the go-to place for local information is not really the TVs, it's the newspapers. The newspapers are usually the ones that feed the TV stations their news. The newspapers set the agenda, the journalistic agenda for everybody else in town. So you head over to the Philadelphia Inquirer, Philadelphia Daily News site. What do you get? Here's the lead story. A big story on Ann Coulter. My girlfriend Ann Coulter had some difficulty with Delta Airlines, and the people at the Philadelphia Daily News mocked Ann Coulter for being upset and tweeting about how upset she was with Delta Airlines. Then here's a story that happened. This is a story that happened about a week ago, but they're still in the paper every day. 2 white kids went out and killed 4 people in Pennsylvania, and they've been doing that story every day for the last week. Oh yeah, here's a gripping story that was produced yesterday. Here's about a local PR guy. When newspapers do stories about PR guys, well, that is what it is. Oh, there's Allen Iverson back in the news, the old ball player. Remember him? Practice. Yeah, Allen Iverson is the thug who was being sent to prison for beating the hell out of a bunch of old white people at a bowling alley before John Thompson went to the judge, told him he was going to rescue him and take him to Georgetown University so he could play basketball, and that is exactly what happened. ESPN revisited the story of Allen Iverson last year in its series 30 for 30, and they pretty much figured out that the only reason Allen Iverson was sentenced to prison for beating up all those white people at that bowling alley, Allen Iverson and his crew, was because of relentless white racism in Virginia Beach. Well, what else did the Philly Inquirer produce for today's paper? Oh yeah, there's at least 4 anti-Trump stories about how Trump is a treasonous criminal and should be run out of town, if not sent to prison. Well, here's a good story. Anybody around here knows what this story is about. ShopRite is training criminals to be cashiers. If you've ever been to ShopRite, you know what that means. Oh, check this one out. This is way more important than anything that happened in Germantown. They're serving fresh bread at Panera Bread and other stores in the area. And of course, here's a story about, this was produced by a local writer yesterday, Sunday, the day of the big party that got out of control. I almost said riot. There's a story about the woman's, I think the tournament was the Open Championship for the LPGA, which was held at Trump National Golf Course down in Florida. Everybody loved the course. Everybody loved having Trump there. The Philadelphia Inquirer produced a big story about how Trump is a treasonous butthead and how everybody hated him going to his own golf course. Oh yeah, at these 2 large gatherings of white people that the Philadelphia Inquirer / Daily News reported in today's paper, written yesterday, both in both stories, there were no examples of white violence or violence of any kind. You know, the Philadelphia Inquirer did get around to reporting something on this party that got out of control. The took them almost 12 hours to put something up. But they put something up, or what they put up? They put up a wire story. They didn't even have their own reporter do the story. They grabbed something off the wire about a bunch of teenagers that were somehow doing something with cops at a party. Still not clear what, but I got a kick out at the end of the story. Of course, the Philadelphia Inquirer reminds everybody what a great job they are doing, how they need your support, because they are into providing quality news and watchdog journalism. They are independent, fact-based news organization. We will always strive to provide indispensable journalism to our community, except if it involves 500 black people rioting on the streets of Germantown. TV stations did a little bit of a better job, so let's look at what they did, and then what we're going to have to do is, you look at them all, you piece them together, and you read between the lines, and let's see what we can figure out.
500 teens create a huge disturbance in East Germantown. They're told to go home, but instead they disobey police and begin throwing bottles. Steve Keeley at the Lonnie Young Rec Center where this all started. Steve.
Well, no surprise. The kids aren't going to be too happy when they're out by their swimming pool here in the middle of this landlocked city and at the basketball court where an unauthorized DJ was entertaining the kids when everybody told the DJ to shut it down, and they told the kids to go home, and the kids weren't in any hurry to go home, and that's when they got angry. And the police report to us that they were having bottles thrown at the police as the police were telling the kids to go home to mom and dad.
There's no reported injuries to police. There's no reported arrests. And there's also no reported injuries to civilians at this time. Parents need to be aware that when they're sending their juveniles out, I know it's nice to have the fresh air and to be out with their friends on a summer night, but parents have to be aware what their children are doing, who they're with, and what they're getting involved in. They need to be home at a decent hour, and they need to be home in compliance with the ordinance, the curfew ordinance of the city of Philadelphia.
You know, if bottles are flying at officers, I guess Lieutenant Dave Bach up here in TAC Air, which called in to help disperse the kids with the spotlight on the Philly police chopper, was the safest officer of all. Unfortunately, none of the police who rushed over here got hurt, and they eventually got all the kids home, and everything's peaceful right now, and the sound of this water, very soothing, Thomas, and hopefully that'll be soothing to the kids as they can take a dip back here first thing this morning after what happened here last night.
Yeah, let's hope so. Certainly don't need a repeat. It's troubling to hear, troubling to report.
And this was the chaotic scene last night in East Germantown. Glass bottles were thrown at police officers as they struggled to contain a flash mob of about 500 rowdy teenagers.
Eyewitness News reporter Henry Rossoff is live outside the Lonnie Young Rec Center. Henry, good morning. So what happened?
Good morning, Jim and Rahel. This flash mob effectively shut down this rec center, and we can still show you some of the remnants of the glass bottles here that the crowd ended up throwing at police when officers arrived. We got this video from publicly available social media posts. It shows the crowd of about 500. Police say most were 12 to 17 years old. Officers tried to disperse the crowd, and that's when the teens began hopping on cars and throwing those glass bottles at officers. In some images, you can see them really daring officers to escalate the situation. Police instead decided to wait things out and contain the crowd, not making any arrests. And after a few hours, the crowd went home without any serious property damage or officers being hurt. This is the poster that was shared around social media saying there would be a cookout last night lasting until whenever. That's the event that did eventually become this flash mob. We can also tell you it doesn't appear that anyone in the general public or in the crowd of teens was hurt, that according to police.
An orchestrated gathering at a Philadelphia rec center got way out of hand. Hundreds of teens spilled into the streets and started throwing things, leading to police to have to break things up. Action News reporter Jeanette Reyes is live for us at police headquarters with the full story. Good morning, Jeanette.
Good morning, Matt. It was complete chaos for quite some time. We do know that the teens outnumbered police by the hundreds, at one point turning on them and starting to throw bottles at the police officers. The melee broke out around 9:30 last night along the 1000 block of Shelton Avenue near the East Germantown Rec Center. Philadelphia police quickly responded and tried to control the crowd, even shutting down some Chinese takeout stores where some of these teens were hiding out. Not long after police responded, the teens became violent, throwing bottles at them. One resident tried to do her part to stop the chaos, but it was no use.
Talking about the police this and the police that, but what they did to the police, they were so disrespectful, throwing bottles and everything. That was so disrespectful. I got emotional, me and my sister. I started crying. I'm trying to get the kids to go home.
Now, the teens tried multiple times to converge again, but police eventually got them to disperse for good. Now, authorities say they used social media to set this all up and meet up. Fortunately, there were no injuries reported and no arrests were made.
You can't pull it off with anything. Y'all gotta do better. Oh, they trying to jump. Oh. Yeah. Put that dirt shit. Yo, niggas on the car, yo. Yo. What the? Yo. You gotta go up there. Oh. Oh, shit. Oh, nigga, wrong. Hey, stay on the side. Don't ever go in the street. Stay on the corner. Back your ass up.
Oh, they calling me jumping on cars
That is about
Contamos con tutorías y mentorías para que logres alcanzar tu meta. Estamos ubicados en Bella Terra Mall.
So the reporters and the public officials all figured out that the only problem in Philadelphia last night was a couple of parents kind of forgot to figure out where their kids were. Okay, here's the thing in Philadelphia with black kids. There are no parents. This is a city with a 60% dropout rate, and the 40% who are remaining, about 60, 70, 80% of them graduate without being able to read over a third grade level. And so think about the parenting required to make that happen. Think about all the reading that never took place, all the museum visits that never took place, all the discussions at the family table that never took place. Think about all the rap music that did take place. Think about all the people they met, all the people who encouraged them to engage in a criminal lifestyle that did take place. A lifestyle of nonstop racial resentment, racial hostility, and black criminality. So this is Philadelphia. This is Germantown. This is a town now where 500 black people can rampage through the streets of Germantown, destroying property. Yeah, they were jumping up and down on cars. Okay, that's destroying property. You heard them. They heard them talk about hiding in Chinese restaurants. They weren't hiding in Chinese restaurants. They were going in there and terrorizing the people who own the restaurants and refusing to leave when they were asked. God knows what happened inside of those restaurants. Love how that one reporter came on and told us that, oh yeah, no wonder they're angry. They were just blowing off some steam at a pool party. Cops came in, told them to knock it off, and they had a riot. Well, wouldn't you? That's how they roll in Philadelphia, where reporters and public officials, as this story demonstrates, are in denial, deceit, and delusion about the enormous amount of black criminality, the enormous amount of black mob violence in Philadelphia. How often do we see stories out of Philly? How often do they happen that they never make the local papers? Temple University, anyone? Center City, Philadelphia, anyone? Blowing off some steam, anyone? Oh yeah, remember that quote came from Philadelphia. Temple University hired somebody in their public health department of their medical school. Hired three fellas to go out there and see if they could do something to cool the kids down. And the medical journal said, hey, so what's up? What are you going to do? Are you concerned about the violence on the street? The guy goes, oh, no, it's not violence. That's just some kids blowing off some steam. That's a medical journal reporting that from Philadelphia, from Temple University, a center of critical race theory, which tells us that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. Especially why we should never make the black kids angry.